Candles, welcome to Candela Learnings. This is me Shama, your biology tutor. I hope all my dears are doing great. Okay, so in our last session, we were dealing about the different types of asexual reproduction, right? So in today's session, we will be dealing with the sexual reproduction that takes place in flowering plants. Okay, but before that, what was happening in asexual reproduction? In asexual reproduction, we requires only one parent for the production of progeny or more number of progenies, right? Whereas in case of sexual reproduction, for the production of a progeny, there we require two parents of opposite sexes. Okay, so now we'll see what is a definition of a sexual reproduction. So sexual reproduction, it takes place by the combination of special reproductive cells which are known as the sex cells. And sex cell, they are also known as the germ cell. Okay, and sex cell, they are of two types. They are the male sex cells and the female sex cells. Okay, now the cells which are involved in sexual reproduction are known as the gametes. So we'll have two gametes, the male gamete and the female gamete. Okay, now what happens? The male gamete, it will fuse with the female gamete, and what is formed there? A zygote is formed there. Okay, so this is how sexual reproduction takes place in living organism. So in today's session, we will see how sexual reproduction it takes place in flowering plants. So flowering plant, it basically means they are the angiosperm. Now, children, when you see a plant, what is the most attractive part in a plant? Yes, it is the flower only, right? We have got different colors of flowers having different fragrance and all, right? And why the flowers have got different colors and fragrance? It is to attract the pollinators. Okay. Now, what is the function of a flower actually? The function of a flower, it is to make the male and female gametes, and they ensure that fertilization takes place to make new seed for the reproduction of a plant. Okay, now we'll see what are the different parts of a flower. So as you can see on the screen, this is an LS of a flower. LS means longitudinal section. So when you cut a flower straight, you will get an image like this. Now basically, a flower has got four main parts, and they are the sepal, the petal, the stamen and the pistil. So this pistil, it is also known as the carpel. Now all these four parts, they are borne on a swollen part which is known as the thalamus or the receptacles. Okay. Next, we'll have a detailing on the four parts of a flower. So what is the first one? It is the sepal. Now what is a sepal? Sepal, it is a green leaf-like part in the outermost circle of a flower. So below the petal, you can see a green leaf-like structure, and that is what that is known as a sepal. Now when the sepal, when they unite together, or we can say a group of sepal, they are known as the calyx. So what is the function of the sepal? The function of a sepal, it is to protect the flower in a bud stage, in its bud stage. Okay, and it also has got another function, that is, we know that the sepal is green in color. So if it is green in color, it means that it contains chlorophyll. So if it contains chlorophyll, what happens? It helps in photosynthesis. So it has got two main functions. One is it helps in photosynthesis, and the other one is it protects the flower in its bud stage. So that is all about sepal. Okay, now we can move on to the next part, and what is it? The most attractive part of a flower, which is the petal. Now petal, it is a colorful part of a flower, and different plant has got different colors of petals having different fragrance and all, right? Now, so we said that the sepals, they unite together and form what? They form the calyx. Likewise, the petals, they also unite together, and that whole group of petal, it is known as the corolla. Okay, it's not corona, it's corolla. Now, what is the function of this petal? I told that we have got different colors of petals having different fragrance and all. So, why the petals has got different color? It is to attract the insect for pollination. So, the function of petal, it is to attract the insect for pollination. Okay. Then comes the third part, which is known as the pistil. Pistil, they are also known as the carpel. So, carpel, they are the female reproductive organ, and this carpel, it consists of three parts: the stigma, style and ovary. So we'll have a detailing on carpel, but for the time being, just know that these are the different parts of a carpel. Okay. Then what is the last part? It is the stamen, and stamen, it is a male reproductive organ, and stamen, it also consists of two parts. They are the anther and the filament. Okay, so these are the four parts of a flower. Now, before having a detailing on carpel and stamen, you should know some terminologies which is related to a flower. So, the first one is bisexual flowers. Now, what is a bisexual flower? Bi means two. So, if a flower has got both sex organ, which means if a flower has got both stamen and carpel, such flowers are known as the bisexual flowers. Okay, so the next one is unisexual flower. So unisexual flower means if a flower has only one sex organ, which means if a flower has got either stamen or carpel, such flowers are known as the unisexual flowers. Okay, so these are the two types of flowers. So now let's see what are the examples which comes under bisexual and unisexual flower. So hibiscus, lily, mustard all are example of bisexual flower. And under unisexual flowers, just remember the big fruits are examples of unisexual flowers such as jackfruit, papaya, watermelon. All these are example of unisexual flower. It is just for your understanding only. Okay. Okay, so these are the two type of flowers. Next, we'll have a closer examination into the reproductive part of a flower, which is the stamen and the carpel. So the first one is stamen. What is a stamen? Stamens are the male reproductive organ. So as you can see on the screen, the stamen, it consists of two parts. It has got a long stalk which is known as the filament, and above the stalk you can see a bulb-like structure or a knob-like structure which is known as the anther. So basically a stamen has got two parts, a filament and an anther. Okay. Now, it is within this anther, what you can see? You can see the pollen grains, and pollen grains, it is the one which contains the male gamete. Okay, I hope it's clear. Now we can move on to the next reproductive organ, which is known as the carpel, and carpel, it is a female reproductive organ. And carpel, it consists of three main parts: the stigma, the style and the ovary. So stigma, it is the one which receives the pollen grains from anther. Okay, or we can say that it is within the stigma the pollen grains are being glanted. Then it has got a long tube-like structure, or this tube is the one which connects the stigma and the ovary, right? And that tube is known as the style. Okay, now below the style, what you can see? You can see a swollen portion, and that is known as the ovary. So inside the ovary, what you can see? You can see some bead-like structure which are known as the ovule, and ovule is the one which contains the female gametophyte. Okay, so inside the ovary, you can see a bead-like structure which is known as the ovule. Now, ovule is a structure which gives rise, and it contains the female reproductive cells which are known as the gametes. Okay, I hope it's clear to you all. So now let's see how reproduction takes place in plants. So reproduction takes place in plants by a process which is known as pollination. Now, what is pollination, or what is meant by pollination? So pollination, it is nothing but it is an act of transferring the pollen grains from the male anther of a flower to the female stigma. Okay, or in short we can say that it is a transfer of pollen grain from anther to the stigma. And this pollination, it can take place in two different ways. One is self-pollination and the other one is cross-pollination. So self-pollination means it is the transfer of pollen grain from the anther to the stigma of the same flower or another flower of the same plant. Okay, so what I said, it is a transfer of pollen grain from anther to stigma of the same flower or another flower of the same plant. So here same plant is involved. Okay, so now we'll see what is meant by a cross pollination. So cross pollination means it is a transfer of pollen grain from the anther of a flower of one plant to the stigma of a flower of a different plant of the same species. Okay, so these are the different types of pollination that takes place. One is self-pollination and the other one is cross-pollination. Now, what are the advantages of this cross-pollination? So, cross-pollination, it takes place through insects, wind and all. Okay, so the advantage of cross-pollination is that it helps in the production of healthier offspring. It produces abundant and viable seeds, and also new varieties can be produced through cross-pollination. Okay. Now what happens, children? After pollination, what should take place? fertilization should take place, right? Now, how fertilization takes place? Now, after the pollen, it lands onto the suitable stigma. It reaches to the female germ cell, which and female germ cell are present where, children? It is present in the ovary. Okay. For this, a tube grows out of the pollen grain and it travels through the style and it reaches the ovary. Hence, fertilization takes place, and what happens? A zygote is formed, and this zygote will divide and it forms the embryo within the ovule. Now, what happens after maturation? This ovule, it develops a tough coat and it develops into a seed. And what about the ovary? Ovary develops into a fruit. Okay, so after fertilization, the ovary, it becomes a fruit, and ovules, it becomes a seed. Okay, so this is how sexual reproduction takes place in flowering plants. Okay, so let's summarize the things which we have learned in today's session. So today we have learned how fertilization or reproduction takes place in flowering plants. So there we said a flower has got four main parts, and what are they? They are the petals, the sepal, stamen and carpel. And stamen and carpel are the reproductive part of a flower. Okay, then we discussed about pollination, the different types of pollination and how fertilization takes place, right? So that is all about today's session. I hope the session is clear to you all. We'll meet on the next session. Thank you and have a nice day.